Electricity flows in a circuit through the movement of electric charges, typically electrons, within a conductor such as a wire. The flow of electrons is facilitated by a power source, usually a battery or a power supply, which creates. Imagine you have a small loop track, like a race car track, and you want to make a toy car move around the track. But instead of a toy car, we have tiny particles called electrons, and they're like the drivers of the car. Now, to make the car move, we need a special kind of energy called electricity. Just like the car needs fuel, electrons need a push to start moving. This push is given by something called a power source, which is like a battery. The power source has two ends, one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. The power source is like a really strong cheerleader, giving the electrons a big pep talk to get them moving. The cheerleader's words are like the electric potential difference or voltage, which is a fancy way of saying how much push the electrons have. Now, we need a path for the electrons to move around, just like the car needs a track. We use special materials called conductors, which are like the track for the electrons. The most common conductor is copper wire because it lets the electrons move freely. So, we connect one end of the wire to the plus sign of the power source and the other end to the minus sign. This creates a closed loop, like a circle, where the electrons can go around and around. Now comes the fun part. When we connect the wire to the power source, the electrons feel the pep talk from the cheerleader and start moving. They move from the negative end of the power source, through the wire, and to the positive end. It's like a bunch of tiny cars racing around the track. But why do the electrons move? Well, they have a negative charge, and opposite charges attract each other. So, when the electrons get near the positive end of the power source, they feel pulled towards it. It's like a magnet attracting metal objects. As the electrons move, they bump into other electrons, passing along the energy and the push from the power source. This is how electricity flows in the circuit. So, in summary, electricity flows in a circuit when the electrons, which are like tiny drivers, get a push from a power source, like a cheerleader. They move through a path called a conductor, like a race car track, and go from the negative end to the positive end of the power source. It's a bit like a race where the electrons pass the energy to each other as they move, just like cars passing a ball in a relay race. I hope that makes it easier to understand how electricity flows in a circuit.